Hey everyone, there's a new map out, and of course that means there's going to be a new Cavalier Guest guide on how to play the map. I actually really like Alterac Pass. I know there's been a lot of complaints in the community about how snowbally it is, but because it's covered in snow. Okay, joke's over. But I really don't think the map is particularly snowbally. I think people just aren't playing it correctly and aren't necessarily drafting it correctly. So I did a little experiment. There's a lot of people that watch my stream that play 5v5 customs in EU. Basically, most of them are Master, Grandmaster players because comms in EU in Hero League aren't terribly common, even at that level. They made a server where they could sort of play against each other and have a comms environment. All of them have some competitive experience from the amateur scene at a minimum, and it's just sort of a fun thing that they do. So the viewer is Vasamasti, i.e. Froge, and I think each team has a Grandmaster player that's currently ranked Grandmaster. I think the lowest ranked player is actually a Gold 2. It's Dentro, but as you can see, he's actually going to play relatively well. But basically, most players in this game are either Masters or Grandmasters, EU players. And we all sort of understood what exactly we were doing with the map because I sort of explained how I think the map should be played. And you're going to see how it turns out. So first things first, we have a Junkrat. I think I actually overkilled the draft here with Junkrat and Chromie. But the important thing about Junkrat is when the objective comes up, you have a huge defender's advantage. And you can actually poke the objective for forever with a lot of heroes. However, one of the major problems you run into is actually knowing when the channel is happening. On most maps, when you're channeling the objective, you have vision of the enemy team channeling the objective. This is not true on Alterac Pass. In order to have vision of the objective, either the guards need to be alive, so, by the way, kill the guards very, very quickly every time they spawn, or you need something that gives you permanent vision. And the reason I did this draft the way I did was because Chromie, if you go Sands at level 8, gives permanent vision, and also has a vision tool at level 1, Time Walker's Pursuit. Also, you can put traps around, stuff like that. And Junkrat has a permanent vision mechanic as well in the form of his W, in the form of his concussion mine. If he puts the concussion mine down, unless he detonates it, that mine is there forever. There's actually nothing the enemy team can do about it. And as a result, if we're standing behind mid fort and we have any sort of ranged ability, that this is about range 8, maybe range 7.5, we can interrupt the channel forever. And other than them like somehow killing us over the wall, it becomes very, very difficult to interrupt. In fact, Froge, in a little bit of theory crafting, ruined this endless stalling by actually drafting a Stitches for his composition. And Stitches is going to be really good on this map, and for this reason, because the ability to stall mid is basically permanent. And then we have, and I want to emphasize that if mid fort is dead, especially if these walls are dead and the front gate's dead, this strategy suddenly becomes a lot less tenable. So for the first time ever, mid fort is actually the most important fort on a Heroes of the Storm map. Generally speaking, Concursed Hollow, you're like it's top or bottom fort because it's your boss lane potentially. On Dragonshire, the end lane is bottom. There's basically never been a Heroes of the Storm map where mid fort is actually the most important fort. And not only is mid fort the most important fort, because the bosses are so weak, they are basically Cursed Hollow bosses. They have a snowball instead of a root, but the snowball instead of the root actually does make a significant difference. It's quite possible because the null camps actually reduce armor. You can see them reducing armor right here as we're taking them. That mid keep is actually the most important keep. So far in testing, it's actually been easier to end with a null camp pushing, as long as you can keep it, as long as you can keep it zoned correctly and the enemy team can't clear it for free, than it has been to have a boss pushing, because the reduced armor does apply to core, which significantly reduces the effective health of core. So for the first time ever in Heroes of the Storm, like literally, it is quite possible that mid lane is the most important lane, and we're going to get into a little bit of why that's so important to emphasize. But these camps have a 1 minute and 30-second cooldown, so you really want to get them on cooldown. Again, mid lane is very important, but it also just gives you a lot of pressure and vision control. Now, it is a little bit harder to... So this is a really easy one to goaltend, and this is actually the one we end up getting. The bottom one is a little bit harder to goaltend. Even if you have permanent vision mechanics, you have to have someone here and someone here in order to interrupt both sides. There's no or at least there's very few heroes that have enough range to interrupt the entire thing. And generally you'll get cooldown gated even if you try. Tron with Piercing Owls may be able to do it from 13 onwards with the cooldown reduction, but early game it's simply not tenable. So you can see both teams are getting their camps on cooldown, trying to do that. And we get quite a bit of damage on the wall there, back up. We don't know exactly how many of them. I guess we do know how many of them. Stitches is there. But we're going to you just have Junkrat anchoring top. We have Murky anchoring bottom. There's something I really wanted to show with Murky in particular in this video, and it doesn't end up applying here, but it would apply in different circumstances, and we'll go over that a little bit. So again, and now the objective is spawned. And notice that no one is like rushing to the objective. We see the Junkrat mine go down here, and I want to swap over to our vision here for a second. We can see what's going on, and I'm just going to fast forward. So as soon as that guard dies, we still have vision. As long as we have vision, and as long as Chromie is sitting here, they literally can't cap it. It's not possible to cap it. You can see I'm over here anchoring any potential approaches or dives behind the fort. It's something you could do. Their comp can't really do it, but if you had like a Nubarak or some other hero that could mitigate the fort, you could actually come in here and try to kill the person on this side. Stitches does have an angle here that he could potentially hook through, but that's like a really, really unlikely, right? Obviously you can do it from this side fairly easily, but again, I was anchoring over here when Stitches was here to make sure that vision was there, and there would be some sort of save mechanic or peel mechanic there. And so we're gonna, the game's gonna continue essentially. We're gonna have Murky double soaking, also really clever. Shout out to Froge again, actually drafted Mathael. Mathael may well be the best double soaker on this map, simply because of Pale Horse. He has the fastest rotation speed combined with the speed of his wave clear, right? So there's heroes that are faster wave clear, but their rotation speed is worse, and there's heroes that have faster rotation speeds or potentially faster rotation speeds with certain abilities used certain ways, but their wave clear is not necessarily as fast. Leoric, for instance, could E over the mud pit and then mount, and that might be a little tiny bit faster. So there's lots of double soakers. Mathael is probably in the top 3 though, and we have a Murky instead of a Mathael. The net benefit of the Murky is that we don't have to come back to this camp. He will be able to continually bribe it, and if we ever get like really cheeky, we may be able to sneak over here and bribe theirs. So you have a stall hero. It can be Junkrat, it can be Chromie. There's actually quite a few options. I'm doing a written guide for Alterac where I'll go over some more hero choices that are potentially viable in these roles. But I just want to give people an idea of thinking about how to play the map, right? Because it's not as straightforward as you might initially think. So you have a double soaker, and the double soaker is going to be going either mid-bottom if the objective spawns top, or mid-top if the objective spawns bottom. And you are going to need one person to sort of step up on this side and keep this wave cleared. In this case, it is for us, it's a Junkrat. It could have been me as Johanna, and I actually think optimally it would have been me as Johanna, so that Junkrat could get his stacks running on Taste for Explosion just by continually poking here. I was also playing with something like 300 ping this game because I was playing on EU. It's not super fun. I think I actually ended up dying here. I almost live. Cascon's potioning is almost good enough, but not quite. Feels bad. Everyone was targeting the streamer as well. It's the thing that happens when you play in customs with people who know that you're a streamer. Everyone's like, I want to kill the streamer. I wasn't even streaming. They still wanted to kill me. Feels bad. So again, and we see the objective, and now we see the slowing sands come up, and again, that is giving us permanent vision. And they simply can't cap, right? So since there's multiple heroes that can completely deny this capping potential in the game, and some of them are easier than others because there's a vision requirement. Some of them they're going to need like someone to physically step up and keep an eye on the objective so that they can do their thing. And some of them have a vision mechanic built in. Junkrat I think could actually deny it by himself 100% of the time. Chromie post 8 I think can deny it by herself 100% of the time. You could do something really strange like having a stealth hero be AFK here, and they would actually grant like permanent vision as well. They'd be a ward. Spy Games Eric, maybe. Like there's some potential here for a lot of different variations on how to grant vision. And then again, you just need a little bit of vision and a little bit of range, and you should be able to position correctly to get either one. And then heroes with massive displacements that can like catch you out and pick you from that defensive structure like Stitches are going to be really, really strong. So you can see, I mean, I think and one of the big things that causes Alterac pass to snowball so hard is that one team generally wins the objective relatively early on. Like they win it pre-10. If you win the objective pre-10 and then you push with it correctly, you're going to get 10. And then the enemy team is like level 8 and you're level 10 and you're like, oh, well, why don't we just get boss? And then even though the boss is not super strong, obviously pushing with a boss and a 10 to 8 advantage is very likely to result in more bosses or more buildings, and you get even further ahead. But with this delay style play where you're not focusing exclusively on the objective, it's kind of like playing Dragonshire, where you have a point you need to control, but in order to actually get the objective, you need to have full control of 2 points. Right? Well, if you only control 1 point, then you still need to be soaking all the lanes. Like, you're not actually overly committing to that idea. Cascon ends up going down there. It feels bad. And notice, again, that Froge's team is very much focusing on mid-fort. They're actually pressuring us. They're getting their camp on cooldown. They're pressuring mid-fort out. So we've now lost quite a bit of our safety net in terms of controlling this capture point. And we are still having the Murky Double Soak. Epixor is doing his best to get those bribe stacks going consistently. Nicely done. And we're seeing Kael'thas with the zone here. And they do eventually, you know, because this is a 5-man effort, essentially. Mathiel with the zone, Kael'thas here, 3-man zone on the bottom. This is a 5-man effort to get this channel. But again, it wouldn't have been possible if this keep wall wasn't already dead. So their fort wall wasn't already dead. So they had to get the fort wall out. And we're going to see Pulse Bomb used on Merc. I didn't notice that during the game. It's pretty funny. And I'm trying to force here. I'm trying to step up. We get the Blessed Shield. I'm constantly channeling just for the contest thing to go out. And it looks like and we're not going to be able to quite get it in time, even though you can spam contest. And there it is. 2.3 seconds to go. And we get it. So we do manage to stop them. And this is sort of the correct play in a lot of cases. If you get a pick, and you are able to control the space, you should step up and try to get the channel. But the only time you should step up and try to get the channel if the enemy team has any stall heroes is only when you have that numbers advantage. And you don't want to fall into like a Battlefield of Eternity trap where it used to be early on Battlefield of Eternity, you could get a 5-man wipe and you would be like, oh, we can race the Immortal, but then you were all low and out of cooldowns, the enemy team came back at full health and full mana, and then they wiped you, and then they got the Immortal. You don't, as soon as they come back, even after you get that pick, you want to back off. You don't want to fight into that defender's advantage and the zone control. We're gonna get the camp out again, and this goes on for quite a bit longer. Believe it or not, both of us are just getting our camps on cooldown. We're pushing lanes again. The fort here is quite impactful. I want to emphasize. I want to actually take a moment to point out that Kael'thas was really impactful this game. The area wave clear, like the strong area wave clear, gave them a really big advantage in terms of pushing, and it looks like it's even going to be quite strong at clearing the objective itself. So it's something that's going to be good either offensively or defensively. It's going to be good in these offensive pushes and good in the defensive side as well, because it's going to do a lot of damage to the cavalry. So they do manage to clear these. They finally get the channel. I think I get one blind interrupt here. Could have held that for like a second longer, but Stitches did have vision in me. We're even get the Junkrat mine. The backup to the backup interrupt. And from every thread I've read on Reddit, the average time the objective gets capped is level 7. This is 6 levels later. And I want you guys to see the difference. Fort's already gone. Right? Fort's already gone. So because the cavalry gets 5 armor for every hero in its aura, the optimal thing for the winning team, the team that wins the objective, to do is to actually ignore other lanes. You generally want to 5-man push. This won't get you more experience than if you'd soaked every lane. It'll get you actually roughly the same amount of experience, because the speed you kill the structures and the amount of experience the structures gives is pretty much commensurate with the amount of soak you would be getting. But what it does do is you're essentially staying even in experience, yes, but you're going up in structures, so you're opening up a potential win condition. Generally speaking, if you can stay even and open up a win condition, that's always a worthwhile trade, because you're not actually giving anything up, right? You're giving up a potential lead in order to have a distinct win condition. So we have Junkrat clearing top, and here's what I wanted to emphasize with Murky. I had Epixors go behind. he went behind the enemy team's lane push of choice or push lane of choice and cleared the wave, so that they have the cavalry, but they don't have a wave. It's just 5 heroes and the cavalry. That means 100% of the building damage will be focused onto the cavalry. And Murky in particular is really good at this. He can do it here very, very easily. He can do it here very, very easily. Because Midfort was already dead, like doing it here, they could just simply back up and stop him and kill the fish. But because Midfort's already dead, doing it here is actually very, very safe. Other heroes that could do this very safely are Medivh, just because of his, invulnerability, his Raven form. You could send a Lost Vikings to go clear, cutting or proxying the wave is what it's called. And without the minions to enable the push, the cavalry dies much, much faster. You can see it's taking a lot of damage here. And the push is not as good. The push is not as fast. So if we didn't have if I wasn't, dead, if we didn't have a death here, we would quite likely be in a situation where we potentially could have defended that keep. And again, I think mid keep is the most important, and that's pretty much the average result that I think is going to happen. If teams defend correctly, you're going to get a fort. You're guaranteed to get a fort in a lane if all the forts are alive. If there's one lane that already has something dead, you're pretty much guaranteed to get a keep. But by cutting the wave, we guaranteed they couldn't end. And just do a quick look at experience sources. We don't have any kills. So basically 100% of the enemy team's lead here is from hero kills. The way we've been off-soaking, even though they have a structure advantage, right? We have a minion advantage. We've been clearing better, and they do also get bottom fort here as well. And I want to emphasize this is another reason that pushing mid is so good. If you push. Let's say they pushed bottom. Let's say they had pushed bottom as 5. We could have sent 4 people, or even potentially 5 people, to clear top. We would have actually had Murky cut here, though. So it would have been 4 people instantly clear top. We come down, we instantly clear mid. We come down to here, and they're going to have gotten the fort by then, but we'll be able to defend the keep wall. But by clearing mid, they put us in a situation where we had to have someone cutting the way behind them. We had to have someone clearing top, and it was very hard to send anyone bottom to get that clear as well, and then collapse mid. So the rotation for the enemy team, or the losing team for the objective, is actually much harder to make optimal if you push mid instead. So five-man mid is probably the optimal lane to push whenever you win the objective, unless something really strange has happened on the map. Or unless you potentially, if you have something like a Hanzo and maybe bosses are sort of one of your win conditions, maybe you'd be like, okay, we want to do bosses. But the null camps do enable core pushes a little bit better, just because the armor reduction significantly reduces the effective health of core. The call here was to go in with Riptire and Blessed Shield, but Froge actually body blocked the shield. Again, playing on 300 ping, all my movements were fairly predictable to a GM tank player. Rip. But we do manage to defend there, and meanwhile our offlaner Epix is continuing to catch up. So okay, notice we're not really that far behind. We do assume that they're on boss here, but we make the call to get camp out, and we even make the call we send Murky to bribe their camp so that we get a significant push, and you guys will see that actually does quite a lot of damage. It looks like he doesn't do it right away. There we go. And I want to make an interesting point here before this push gets really started. Normally losing a keep puts you in this situation where you're constantly like, oh man, we have to send someone back to clear. We have to send someone back to clear, because catapults can actually end the game on their own. This is not true on Alterac Pass. If the game goes late enough, because minions continue to scale over time, whereas buildings stop scaling at minute 20 on normal maps, and I don't think the Alterac core scales at all. Actually, I think it's just 24,000 health flat the entire game. But the core will clear the minions. It'll clear them and then regen to full health very, very quickly. It will a single minion wave, unless it goes very, very late in the game. And again, I think that's you're looking at 20-25 minutes of scaling, levels where the point where a single hero could almost kill the core by themselves, in 10 or 15 seconds, is it's not very scary. You don't really need to worry about your core dying. So losing a keep is normally a big deal on other maps because it's a constant, okay, we have to make sure catapults are clear for the rest of the game. And on Alterac Pass, it's well, yeah, that sucks. But two lanes will eventually end. It does take a little while, and again, it depends on what scaling the minions are at in terms of in terms of game time. And we do end up getting the Murky Death there. And I'm trying to pick up potions. And Stitches ends up dying for that, so I call Worth. And we can see the camp is actually doing quite a lot to mitigate the effect of the push. And in fact, mid lane's not being pushed in at all. And we do end up getting mid 4. Murky dies again, unfortunately. And most of the snowballs that people complain about on Alterac Pass are like 4 or 5 level leads. The game ends on a cavalry push, or they end because cavalry push and then a boss happens with the talent advantage. We're even. This is 16 to 18. Yeah, we're 2 keeps down, but we're even. It's really important, Alterac Pass, to have an offlaner, to have some sort of macro hero that's going to be catching soak. Vikings may actually well be viable in this map purely for that reason. In our case, it's Murky. In their case, it's Mathael. They've been trying to create win conditions, so their 5-man has been together, and they have had the cavalry. But our offlaner has been trying to keep us even in soak because we're losing. And you can see the difference in XP there, 16k to 12k. And that's sort of what an offlaner does, right? So you're going to want to draft a hero like Blaze, like Leoric, like Mathael, like Murky, potentially Gazlo. There's a few others. You know, obviously there's a lot of double soaking heroes in the game that can sort of keep you even in when you're losing, and you want to just play as conservatively as possible to not give the enemy team too many advantages as they're fighting underneath your keeps. And so we make the call as we see the Mathael top to immediately come to this objective. We have Junkrat pushing out bottom, and Rosmix ends up going down. Nicely done. And so now we have an advantage, right? And the call all game has been, okay, we're only going to push an objective, we have an advantage. We have Sands for zoning here. I kind of wish this was further up just for the purely vision reasons. But obviously Sands is just very difficult. I spread bomb there, that's embarrassing. And we just need to hold this for 30 more seconds, right? So we're trying our best to get, you know, we're just trying to zone them off the shrine. We're trying to keep these cleared. We still have Murky double soaking because we would like to catch up in experience. You can see with the Mathael, they're doing the exact same thing. A lot of the times, even in the very, very late game, your offlaners on this map are simply not going to be at these fights. The only time they'll come is between, like when the objective's already been captured and they're pushing, and you're pushing with them. They probably won't come to the defense. Their job is still to soak. And during the objective, their job is to soak. Or they'll come if you get a pick and you need to like force a 5v4 in order to secure the objective. But as long as their offlaner is soaking, your offlaner should be soaking. Pretty straightforward. And this is actually a little bit threatening, just because this camp, we talked about, it does reduce armor, but it is starting to go down. We actually check that really quick. And the call here is to push bottom. Again, mid will not end on its own no matter what. One lane will never end on its own. So we decide to try and equalize the imbalance, essentially. And we're going to try our best to fight in the aura to give the cavalry as much armor as possible and make it as difficult as possible. Push. Murky does get it. I think he actually got a... Did he clear a wave there? I think he cleared a wave there just to get a little bit more experience. And the call was for him to come. So this is the first time he's come. And actually, like, you know, sort of fought with the team. You can see 20 armor, 4 of us in the aura. And you can see we go kind of in and out. This is actually something that, again, everyone kind of optimally wants to be in the aura. But this is a relatively small aura, and Kael'thas is a really good hero at punishing that. All the mages, I think, will be good at it. In terms of the ones that do a lot of area damage, Jaina. So they're heroes, obviously. I'm sure some are coming to mind for everyone who's watching right now. Like, oh yeah, if they were in that small area, XYZ would be good. There's going to be a lot of heroes that are really good on the defense because it denies the armor aura just from the sheer amount of area damage. You can see Bile. I don't think fighting in the lane was necessarily the best call here, and we're trying to run it down. And notice the movement speed aura is quite helpful. Murky ends up going down, but we do get the... and they actually end up clearing the entire wave with the Kael'thas, and that ends up making the tower targets me, which is slightly unfortunate. But, you know, we've caught up in experience. We were 16 to 18, and now it's simply a 20 to 20 fight. Rosmix may end up going down here. He might get murkied. I don't remember if he gets murkied or not. He does not get murkied. Top is pushing in a lot, and this is actually another reason that the 5-man push can be so strong, because if you 5-man push and the enemy team decides to 5-man defend, they actually will lose a lot in other lanes. I think there was a fort that had just died in this lane, and it actually ended up getting almost getting, I should say, a keep. This barely lives. Like, this is the difference of, you know, not a whole lot. 715 health remaining. Call here. We're dead. They're dead. Is get boss. Just immediately start it. We figure they're either on their camp or on top boss because they were up there. And we'll be alive at roughly the same time. But they sort of lack information. They don't have the same vision mechanics that we do. We have better boss control with the Junkrat trap, especially because he can get it down early, because that means he can double bomb it. And if you double bomb a boss point, you're simply never going to be able to take it away from a Junkrat team. If the Junkrat can get there early enough. So they're starting to fight this. We're here though. We have the boop. Murky ends up going down, but we end up getting the pick on the kill pass here, I believe. No, he actually just barely lives. This fight's a bit of a mess, but it is a fight over boss point. And in the very, very late game, bosses can become a win condition. Not because they're particularly good, but late game scaling on bosses is always scary. They always have a lot of HP. So boss control heroes, if you're drafting a late game stall comp, may well end up being really viable. So maybe your Tyraels, maybe your Hanzos. Hanzo's good for vision anyway on the objective itself. And the potential interrupts, if you can get really good scatter angles, are potentially a thing. Also, really long range on his Q. So there's lots of other things that can potentially be quite good here if we're talking about bosses. This fight goes on for a little bit. And I want to draw attention again. This is a quite scary camp that's pushing in. It's stacked up, and it's actually going to do a lot of damage because we do have 2 keeps down, so there's only 20 armor, and you can see the armor debuff starting to work here, and it goes down to 0 armor. No armor left. I make the call because I've done so much testing on Alterac Pass, I know that won't end. I've actually tested this. I know for a fact that won't end, and there's 5 heroes dead. So it could potentially end if the wave stacks up. If there had been another wave behind it, or if there had been a hero there, there's actually a real chance that could have ended. But without those factors, a single lane, again, simply won't end. But imagine if imagine if they'd had a global, right? A global could have potentially flown in there, especially if it's 2 globals, and actually ended the game purely off that armor damage. So again, the null camp is a serious threat as soon as midkeep is down for the remainder of the game. It's kind of boring because the game is simply over at this point. We kill core, and notice that the boss is not really doing that much damage. 675 basic attack damage. So it's you know, it's 675 DPS per second, which for late game heroes perspective is like not necessarily that much. There's many heroes that are far over that if you count all their abilities being used on core. So Abathur could also be quite good on this map because of mines and vision and his ability to potentially side soak. Although if you're side soaking and double soaking, especially with Abathur, you will need mines to use them as wave clears. That doesn't mean you can necessarily be using them as a vision mechanic. But that's the map. That's the way Alterac Pass probably should be played. And to my understanding, for teams that have been sort of testing it in the pro scene for fun, that's sort of how they've been playing it. It's not all about the objective. The objective is, yes, you have to control the objective to prevent the enemy from capping it, but you only want to go cap your side of the objective if you're in a winning position already. You don't get the objective and then win. You get into a winning position and then get the objective. Mid fort is the most important one in the game. Mid keep is the most important keep in the game in a lot of ways in terms of sustained threat to the core because bosses aren't necessarily going to end. You can end with the boss push, but generally it's the result of getting picks. You know, just like on other maps where you push with the boss, but the boss doesn't end on its own necessarily. It's just the boss is defending you as you have this team fight in the enemy team space. Feel free to leave any questions or comments questions in the comments down below. I would be happy to answer them. I will also be writing. I actually am going to be doing a more thorough written guide to the map. It should be coming out in the next 3 or 4 days. I just wanted to give you guys a video because there's been so much frustration with Alterac Valley, and particularly today there was a lot of people asking, Alterac Pass is so snowbally, why are there any dev changes to it? And I actually don't think Blizzard should make any changes to the map until people learn to play the map correctly. I think at this point in the game, making any changes would be an unfortunate mistake. Infernal Shrines, when it first came out, was considered very snowball-y and was considered like unfun to play on for a lot of players because whoever got the first objective won. And Infernal Shrines only needed some very subtle tweaks. Minions went from 30 to 40. Or the captured monsters that you needed to get the objective went from 30 to 40. There were some small scaling changes, and suddenly the map was literally one of the best maps in Heroes of the Storm, beloved by pros everywhere. It's, I think, still the most popular mapping in the Korean meta by a decent margin. And I don't think Alterac needs big changes. I think that if people learn to play the map like this, with the acknowledgement that stalling and soaking and getting little advantages and getting the camp out on cooldown and focusing on how to correctly siege mid down so that the stalling becomes less effective or more dangerous, either one, however you want to look at it. And what heroes are good against that style of play? What heroes have these over-the-wall displacements that can punish? What heroes have vision mechanics? What heroes can do strange things on the map that can get you ahead despite the fact that the enemy team is double soaking? Things like that. I tried to load too many of them into one draft just to show them all in one game, so hopefully you guys understand that I drafted this composition specifically to make this video, and not because I think Chromie and Junkrat should be on the same team. You might have Chromie or Junkrat, but not both. You might have, you know, Lyric instead of Murky. It doesn't matter. I actually do like Froge's innovation. I think Mage is a good point. And again, shout out to Snipe City Customs for helping me, for being willing to play a game and help me make this video. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully, you know, starting tomorrow, everyone likes Alterac Pass just a little bit better.